Hey, Southern Nevada, let's talk about your tap water. Despite its hard mineral-forward taste, your water meets safety standards and keeps you healthy. Sourced from the Rocky Mountains, it's tested 300,000 times, ensuring your tap water meets or surpasses the highest quality standards. Hey, I grew up on the stuff and I turned out all right. You've got a lot on your plate. SNWA is taking care of what's in your glass. Learn simple ways to enhance the taste at snwa.com. SNWA is a not-for-profit water agency. While the high-profile decisions affecting Las Vegas and the Strip tend to dominate headlines, Henderson has been making the news lately with its own controversies. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we talk with Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter Casey Harrison, who's been closely following the Henderson City Council and the Henderson Police Department, both of which have had enough recent drama to script a soap opera. So, has Henderson suddenly gone bonkers? It's Monday, June 9th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. All right, Casey, what is going on in Henderson? Like, seriously, it seems pretty Bravo channel over there right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, David. I'm really happy to be on. And I mean, what hasn't been happening in the city of Henderson lately?
Exactly.
We've had the of course the ousted police chief who was fired in March. Just a couple weeks ago, she announced her run for mayor. So she'll
Good on her. Good on her.
She will be challenging incumbent Michelle Romero. She comes in with a lot of support. She already has a few endorsements, and she won her race in 2022. It didn't even advance to the general election because it's a nonpartisan race. And
so she won outright. Mayor Romero won outright.
Yeah, so during the 2022 primary, she won with something like 75% of the votes. So she's going to have a lot of support, I think, going into this election season.
Yeah, she was on the city council prior to becoming the mayor, right?
Yeah, to my knowledge. And to be fair, too, a disclosure, I'm relatively new to the Henderson beat. I've been based here in Las Vegas for a couple of years now, but I started at the Review-Journal in April. So I think I come in at a pretty interesting point, but there, as always, I might be missing a thing or two in terms of context.
Oh, well, our listeners will figure that out for us. But I will say this. I've been following your coverage of it, and I do believe you're following it very closely. And it's important because Las Vegas or the Valley isn't just the Strip. We got to know what's happening in the municipalities. So you mentioned Holly Chadwick. She was the chief of police who got ousted. Any other really good controversies of late that you've been noting or that are lingering in some respect?
I would say it really kind of all harkens back to the departure of Chadwick. She was officially fired March 4th, and during a city council meeting that day, there was a big show of support from a contingent of the public who has said time and time again, and they've showed up at several city council meetings since, basically saying that the city isn't being transparent enough. They really take issue with the circumstances by which Chadwick left the city. And so basically, our reporting has shown that the city gave Chadwick an ultimatum to resign or be fired, basically due to philosophical differences. And so
that seems weird. Philosophy between the city council and the police chief. So what was going on there?
Yeah, so that's what they say. That's the reason that they give. So I would say the real genesis of this starts back in 2023. And this is a report from a former RJ staff writer, Brianna Erickson, who does just incredible work. She left journalism briefly, but she's now back in it. So congrats to her. Just quick shout out. But that report, really detailed how Chadwick cleared the disciplinary record of a police detective who was accused of hurling racial slurs and allegedly urged the killing of Mexicans and Black Lives Matters protesters. So pretty incendiary, right?
Yeah.
That report basically detailed a detective, Kevin Lapierre, who was found to be in violation of HPD procedures over a dozen times during a span, I think, from 2021. But those findings were made in December of 2022. The recommendation from the police detectives who investigated it, they advised that there should be some sort of disciplinary record, that he should be fired. That decision ultimately gets reversed 9 days later. And the decision behind that is sort of murky.
And who changed that decision? Was that Chadwick?
We believe it was Chadwick, or
Hmm.
at least that's what the previous reporting has stated.
Yeah, and it
And
seems like it's fallen on her lap. Okay.
and actually, if you go and read the story, there's a snippet that I think was really emblematic, and it's sort of gone down into RJ lore here. Chadwick did not respond to comment for the story, and so when Brianna Erickson, she tried to reach her several times, and there's a video attached to the story, kind of like chasing her down, like, are you not being transparent about the police? About the firing, and it's a spectacle. And I do think for somebody who's now, fast forward a few years later, is now running a mayoral campaign that is pretty focused on transparency, that's going to be a very central question to her campaign, and how she's able to answer that, I think, will dictate her success on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I mean, that always makes for interesting chatter to see reporters chasing down public officials who don't want to answer the stinking questions. Okay, so we've got Chadwick. She becomes the police chief out of the ranks, right, in 2023?
Yes, she was there for a long time. She was there for, I want to say, more than 2 decades. And I should quickly just state that the detective who is in question, he's denied all of this. And because Chadwick hasn't had much to say about the issue, obviously we don't know her side of things too. But that's not to say, of course, we gave her the platform to try and give her that space.
Right, right. Okay, so there's the beef between Chadwick and the city council over this detective, ostensibly, maybe some other stuff too, or is that just the main thing?
So that's one of the big things. So Chadwick has also bumped heads with police union leaders. There was an ongoing dispute when it came to working mandatory overtime. Andrew Regenbaum, he's the spokesman for the Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers. Back when Chadwick announced her run for mayor back a couple weeks ago, they said that she has the opportunity to win their endorsement. Not a done decision. They haven't given it to Romero or possibly anybody else who at this point in time
Yeah.
has thrown their hat in the ring, because I will remind you too, it is very early in the process. The
Yeah, I
official
know. We just
paperwork
got over an
deadline.
election, it seems, and now people are already geared up for 2026 summer. So that'll be interesting. Okay, so we've got Chadwick for a couple of reasons, whatever. She comes into this beef. They say you could either resign or we're going to fire you. They fire her, and now she's running against the mayor. Drama number one. But she wasn't the first police chief in recent years to get ousted. From my understanding, since 2017, which to me doesn't seem that long ago, we have had three police chiefs ousted in Henderson under different clouds of controversy. Are you familiar enough to walk us through maybe some of the highlights of why other police chiefs don't seem to last more than a couple years each?
Well, I will say that each individual case seems to be different, but there
Hmm.
is it even goes on beyond 2017. This theme that there hasn't been much longevity at the helm of the Henderson Police Department. So,
Hmm.
fast forward a little bit, they recently named a new police chief. It was former police or Deputy Chief Reggie Rader who was named the Henderson Police Chief. He takes over, and he will become the ninth full-time chief in Henderson since 2005. And
Wow.
so,
Okay, that's even more than I thought.
yeah, it's sort of a vicious cycle, right? It begets more turnover, because if it starts at the top, they might come in, and with the workings of city politics, maybe they don't get along with the city manager, maybe they don't get along with city council or somebody else in the city, and then that sort of dooms them from the start, because it's not the person that they wanted in place right away. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely a really interesting thing to keep an eye on. But it's just hard because there's been so much turnover. It's hard to say for certain.
Yeah, it really is, Casey, a weird question of optics because, as a lifelong Las Vegan, when you do hear about Henderson and their police department, oftentimes it's via reporting about a lawsuit, about use of police violence, about video of them beating up a man suffering a diabetic seizure, and them thinking it was a DUI, and them just like wailing on him, and stuff like that. There was also a recent controversy about the Henderson Detention Center and how things were going on in there. And the Review Journal did some award-winning reporting on that, and that goes to the police department because they're basically in charge of the detention center.
Hmm.
So, not the best reputation, I would think, which to me is surprising. They keep trying to put up these police chiefs, right? And to say, okay, everything's okay now, and then boom, they wind up with these like heated quit or we'll fire you.
Yes. I think the term transparency is going to be a word that you are going to hear over and over and over again until next November. If you're a sicko political junkie that is really fine-tuned to Henderson politics.
I feel like you see me. I am
But
that sicko.
but I really think that whatever side of this partisan battle you're on, I think there's an argument to be made about transparency for both, because I think one of the things that a lot of people who are aligned with Chadwick have at least told me, the thing that they take issue with the current city council administration and the makeup is that there hasn't been any transparency about this apparent consulting contract that the city had to learn what quote unquote best policing practices were. And so
Hmm.
I think that's a part of it. And I think another thing too is the process by which Chadwick was fired. And so like everything that has been put out so far by either city manager Stephanie Garcia Vaus or like when I asked Mayor Romero about a month ago when she announced her mayoral bid, it all basically boils down to it was a personnel decision and it's a city policy that we don't talk about that. But I think if you have been, like if you've been reading the RJ report that came out all the way in December 2023, I think it's hard optically to defend a police chief who, at least on paper, defended and cleared the penalty record of an officer and a detective who is accused of being a bigot. So it will be incumbent upon Chadwick during this process to lay out specifically why that situation unfolded the way it did and why she didn't quote unquote see eye to eye with the city manager and didn't align with the city's vision.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino. A meal isn't just about what's on your plate. It's about what you bring to the table. San Pellegrino believes the table is where the best of life happens. That's what makes gathering around it so rich and rewarding. And with their unique sparkling natural mineral water, San Pellegrino brings its best so you can bring yours.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
As you've alluded, the police drama has made its way into the Henderson City Council drama. And so now I'm going to call this a crossover episode on my Bravo channel of Henderson. Can you explain why Councilwoman Carrie Cox and Mayor Michelle Romero have traded barbs over Holly Chadwick's removal, and if there's more to their beef?
Yes. Back in January, one of another RJ colleague, former colleague who is no longer here at the RJ, she reported that Romero has threatened legal action against Cox, claiming that the councilwoman had been spreading spurious rumors. That was the quote, spurious rumors about a purported extramarital affair.
Oh my. Oh my.
And so we reported that Romero's attorney had sent to Cox a cease and desist and denying any affair and had accused Cox of making false and defamatory statements about her. To my knowledge, I don't think the matter has been escalated any further.
But did it spill over into this whole Holly Chadwick removal?
So Cox has always been a defender of Chadwick. She has always, when it first came to light that Chadwick was faced with the decision to resign or be fired, Cox would say the public isn't learning everything. You're going to learn more at some point, but something is going to come out. That also has yet to happen at this point in time. But Cox seems to be aligned with Chadwick. Basically, ever since Chadwick was fired, it's been very apparent that I think there's been an attitude change in how the rest of the members of the council deal with Cox. And my best example of this is that so a couple weeks ago at a recent city council meeting, there's this thing in most city council agendas called a consent decree or a consent agreement. And basically it's like 30 or 40 very mundane things that the city council has to act on. And they kind of just all wave a wand and then all of them at the same time.
Sure,
it's either
one
yes
fell
or no.
swoop. Yep.
Yeah. And so one of the things that was being explained was the city attorney had the recommendation to the board to not approve this contract order. And it wasn't that Cox was opposed to voting against it. She wanted a better explanation as to why they came to that conclusion. And so there was like a 4 or 5 minute exchange with the city attorney, going through the logic and why, that didn't add up. And
which sounds like the opposite of a consent agenda. In other words, she pulled it out to have discussion. Okay.
And so they go back and forth for a couple minutes, and then she's like, okay, fine. I agree. And then Councilwoman Monica Larson chimes in and says, this was explained to us all last week, to the effect of, this was all explained to us last week, but you were on vacation, and maybe if you weren't, you wouldn't have had to hold us up right there. And it's something like that, like it was very little, but it like, I remember being there with my photographer and we kind of just like looked at each other for a second. It was like that did not seem to be 100% necessary. Like that was a jab that you could have definitely not done in the middle of a city council meeting. It seems like there's one small thing after another that they're just petty. That's the word that I would use.
I mean, the drama doesn't even stop there, because I want to bring up former Councilman Dan Shaw. He was the incumbent in the last election cycle, so just last year, who got trounced by his opponent, who's now on the city council, even though he raised 10 times more money. At the time, he was being sued for predatory lending practices and misusing indigenous entities to do that. But I understand now that the Henderson City Council is considering their former beleaguered colleague to give them financial consulting advice at a hefty fee. So what's that drama?
Yeah, I think that fits exactly into this so-called, lack of transparency that so many people right now have taken issue with, the likes of Romero and the likes of others on the city council and city manager Stephanie Garcia-Vaus, is the fact that they have to seemingly consult with everybody about everything. And so what is the point of having a guy like Dan Shaw give his financial advice, when he should have been able to do that in 4 years as a city councilman? I mean,
yeah.
And so, if he was that good at it, wouldn't he have won re-election? So I do think,
not to mention the allegations and the lawsuits for predatory lending, which seems to be the opposite of good financial advice.
Yes. I mean, Dan Shaw's been known around Henderson for a very long time. And so I think people have their minds made up about him. And I do think, too, like, to circle back to this mayoral race, if the same people that got Monica Larson in to trounce Dan Shaw, the feeling that I have going into this is that with the support that Romero already has, I think she will be able to outspend Chadwick. But I do think that Chadwick has this very loud and nagging contingent of people who will continue to go to city council. And whether or not, because it's going to be an off-year election, that's going to be a really interesting thing, because, I mean, you only need, in a city like Henderson, I mean, maybe only a couple thousand people to really change the outcome of the mayoral race. And so it's going to be a really interesting race to watch.
All right, Casey. So that alone was a lot, going from police chiefs to city council people to former city council people. So I have to ask, what does all this say about idyllic Henderson in the end?
Yeah, I think it really kind of depends on who you talk to. And so
Mm.
I think if you talk to the existing city council and their leadership, they would say that everything's hunky-dory. And evident last year by the award that they received called the Malcolm Baldrige Award, which is it's a recognition by the U.S. Department of Commerce for quote-unquote organizational excellence. And so
Mm.
as riveting as that sounds, basically what that means is they know how to do things somewhat efficiently, which is saying a lot for a city government. And they are only the fifth municipal city in the 30 or 40 years that award has been given out to actually receive it. So,
Wow.
I think if you were to talk to them, it might look messy, but everything works the way it should. And, I do think if you talk to other people, though, they would say that is exactly not the case. I talked with a volunteer on the Henderson Police Department who she's been one of those vocal advocates urging the city to be more transparent.
Mhm.
And because of that, she was let go from her volunteer position, at least she claims, by the city. And so, I
Dang.
think if people like her, really, if Chadwick can tap into that energy, there might be a sea change in Henderson. And it's just a small microcosm of just the back and forth. And I don't know if every little city is like this or what, just because we're next to the chaotic nature of Las Vegas and the rest of Clark County, but Henderson is just, it's wild out here.
All right, so you're going to stick on Henderson, and you promise to come back if you got any good breaking news on new dramas hitting the Henderson City Council?
I have a feeling it's a matter of when, not if. And so to that, I would just say stay tuned. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to come back anytime, David.
Love it. Well, Casey, thanks so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thank you, David.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, go tell a friend. You could also rate our show, leave us a review. Just take like 20 seconds to type in a nice review and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.
I think in a city that really prides itself on quality of life for residents, they like everything to be polished. They like everything to be shiny. I've been telling people that, like, if you've ever seen the show Parks and Recreation, they are not Pawnee, they are Eagleton. I really, really believe
that is damning them with faint praise.
Well, but that's exactly it. They really want to be that shining suburb on a hill that is like the safest place to call home. And it's not like governed to death by HOAs. It might be. I don't live in Henderson, so
yeah, I think it is, but okay.